What is up everyone, Barricade here and bringing you guys Act 3 of the Gears of War Ascendance novel. At this point in time, I'm not really sure if I'm going to split this up in between two videos. I might because Act 3 is pretty damn long. But we're just going to go ahead and go through the whole story of Act 3 in a very streamlined manner. So let's go ahead and get started here. So in the last video, it ended with Marcus and Kait inside of the cave that they had to ride the rope to essentially get ammo and ammo cache that the outsiders took from the cog. And while inside of it, they heard one of Mackenzie's bombs explode in the distance, basically signifying that the swarm are already inside the caves. So they essentially grab all the ammo they need, swing back to the caves, and they can hear the sound of explosions, signifying that they're already past the first blockade. So Marcus tells the kids to essentially stay back and go back and forth between where they are and the ammo cache to give them ammo as they battle. So kind of give the kids an escape if things go bad, but also to help them out during the upcoming fight. As the kids are doing this, Marcus and Kait decide to split up. So Kait and Oscar go through one of the bigger tunnels, whereas Marcus goes through one of the more smaller side tunnels to essentially kind of push through towards the first blockade to kill any of the swarm that are coming at them. They eventually get ambushed by the swarm as Kait can hear Lancer gunfire in the distance, signifying that Marcus is shooting and fighting these monsters while she's in the other cave with Oscar, but no enemies as of yet. But out of nowhere, they get ambushed, and Oscar and Kait have to use their Lancer and Gnasher to kill the swarm as they're being pushed. They eventually get pushed back to the main common room that they were all staying in and eating food together not too many moments before, and they're killing all the swarm that are coming through their side, but they notice that Marcus hasn't came back yet. Marcus is still in his tunnel and she doesn't even hear any gunfire or anything, so she gets worried and she tries to call out to Marcus, but he is giving her no reply. So she actually tells Oscar to wait at the main entrance while she goes into Marcus's cave. She goes into that part of it by herself, but it's really narrow and kind of hard to, push through even for someone her size. As she makes her way through, she actually finds Marcus hurt, but actually hauls him back to the main common room. But as they're making their way to the common room, they're being chased by a drone. And while all of this is happening, the kids come back to Oscar, and Oscar tells Eli to stay with him, but he doesn't want to listen. He wants to go where Marcus and Kait are to help them out. And he doesn't listen to Oscar, and he actually goes towards the cave that Marcus and Kait are in, and he pulls an amazing save for them. As they're making their way back to the common room, Kait can't really fight back as the drone is pursuing them because she's trying to carry Marcus the whole time. So what Eli does is actually posts himself up with his huntsman rifle, and the second they make their way through the tunnel and get back to the common room, the drone is right behind him. And luckily Eli is waiting for them with his huntsman's rifle and shoots a shot straight through the drone's head and killing it. Marcus tells Eli good shot, and they have to retreat out of the cave back to the path that would lead them back to the ammo stash. So they use Mackenzie's bombs to completely cover and blow all the entrances inside of the cave, and as they're doing so and they're making their way back to the ammo cache, they can see a DB's head falling from the higher part of the cliff, passing them. Marcus looks right at it as it falls down, and they're really confused about what's going on. As they see this, they can hear distant gunfire and also the sound of a scion laughing. While this is happening, it turns out that Baird is actually watching the DBs getting destroyed at South Village right above Marcus and Kait and everybody, as they are sending out highly equipped DBs and DR1s and anything you can think of to South Village to attack the swarm that are there. But they're getting completely slaughtered. And it was kind of funny how the book described it. Just imagine a bunch of DBs landing in the village and getting completely destroyed with like zero effort by the swarm. And the part that was really kind of sad and how the book described it was there was one last DB making a break for it, fighting and doing its very best, and it was actually surviving a little better than the other ones, and it hid behind a well and was shooting at the swarm and everyone. And the thing is, it was doing okay for the most part until a swarmac came out of nowhere and grabbed the poor DB, crushing it with its bare hand and throwing it over the cliff. And this was the same exact DB where its head fell down the side of the cliff and caught an image of Marcus, which I'm going to go back to in a moment. But anyways, as Baird is watching this, he calls upon Sam and Cole to essentially go over the information that they saw and realize that the DBs are really not equipped to fight this battle. They are, great, for watching over people, protecting people, and enforcing laws, but are completely useless in this type of fight. They don't know how to take cover. They don't know how to do all these other things that a real gear would know. And they're just simply walking idiots that get completely slaughtered. So Baird devises a plan to increase their combat code by recording gears in battle. So that's why we saw it in the tutorial. If you guys saw the Gears 5 tech test, there was a tutorial where we can see the Dave robot watching over Dell as he moves and everything to kind of teach the robots how to fight. Anyways, as this is going on, they also realize that the Swarm have this weird capability to block signal by simply being near technology. It's something to do with their anatomy, and that's why they had trouble with things like JD and Dell, not being able to notice that the tower is still on and the signal was jammed, but it looked like it was completely off from a distance. Realizing this, Baird notices that JD and Dell are in fact in trouble as they're being attacked by the Swarm at that burial site. And he actually notices that while they jam new tech, their jamming does not work on old technology. So he uses this old technology that Dave has built into his system to send him an update to JD and Dell while they're going through their craziness on the burial site. So after this, it cuts straight back to JD and Dell, and like I stated the last time, they fell off a staircase after the staircase was blown out by a boom shot. They rolled essentially down the side of the dome of the burial site and now are trying to make their way up through another way to get to the same antenna to send out the signal to let everyone know that this is happening, that the Swarm is out there and making their way across the planet. So JD and Dell try to make their way back up that staircase, a different staircase, and as they're doing so, they're just being bombarded by bullets, being attacked by drones and juvies as well. A drone pushes its way up the tower and tries to go after Dell, but he pulls out the bolt lock that he found and shoots it in the head. After this, it leaves him with only 4 rounds. They're still having to lug Dave around, but out of nowhere he springs to life, and this is simply due to the update that Baird had just sent out, and it makes him work again. He's able to fly and do everything like normal, and he's actually able to interface with the tower and start sending out the signal. He's trying to get, video feed of them standing on the tower, of everything of the Swarm, pretty much letting the world know what's going on and sending it to Jin and everywhere they can. They're still going up, the Swarm is still coming up the tower and keeps trying to approach them. While this is happening, Dell actually devises a really good plan to make one of the staircases a choke point where all the Swarm go up through it, and he's just shooting them and using all his ammo on them, and even uses the bladed side of the breach shot and starts just wailing on any Swarm that is coming up at them. But while he's doing this and trying to protect Dave with JD, he can see a Snatcher approaching on the sides of the walls. If you guys don't remember, essentially what they're in at this point in time is actually in a crater, so there is walls around them. And he can see a Snatcher essentially crawling on side of the walls and approaching them. So what he does as even another smart plan is he actually uses his feet to break the bars that are holding up the staircase that they're on, to knock the staircase down, essentially eliminating the choke point so the Swarm can't come up at him at one side, so he can just simply focus on the Snatcher. The Snatcher does approach and does actually get on the tower that they're on and pushes up towards them, but it's kind of funny how the book described it. Apparently the Snatcher is putting its pointy legs over the side of the tower where they're standing, kind of trying to feel for them, trying to find a way to get a good holding to pull itself up. So he actually shoots the legs out with the bolt hawk, making it fall. So you just imagine a Snatcher falling like stupid high off the ground. It sounds hilarious. But as they're doing this though, they can still see more Snatchers and it seems completely hopeless. But out of nowhere they get radio contact from, believe it or not, Yoon, the pilot that was driving the plane when the burial hatch exploded and the big piece of metal landed right on the cockpit. She was still alive, but she's extremely hurt. The plane turns on, but they notice that it's stuck, it won't move. And they notice that actually that the bottom ramp where they walked off earlier in the story is actually like stuck and dug into the ground. And all they have to do really to get it going is just to push the button to make the ramp come back up. So Del actually comes up with another idea that they can help her get away by shooting the button that would make the ramp go back up. So Del is trying to aim at it, but he realizes that he needs to let JD do it because he's the better shot. So he hands the breach shot to JD. JD takes the shot, shoots the button, and the ramp closes up, freeing the plane. Once this happens, JD tells Yoon that she needs to escape, that she needs to get out of here to save herself. But all she says back to him is, "I'm not done." And she lets them know that they need to turn on Dave to output a signal so she can know exactly where they are. Right after this happens, the tower that they're on, the antenna that is outputting the signal, completely collapses from the gunfire that it's taking from the swarm. They're able to land on a nearby building, but are completely surrounded by snatchers and the swarm alike, and it looks like they're going to be taken. There's really no hope for them at this point. Out of nowhere, Yoon flies in with the plane and does this weird thing. I don't really know how to describe it, but basically imagine them standing on a building with snatchers in front of them. Yoon flies in this really weird, crazy way to where she uses the blades of the plane to cut up the snatchers and also snatch up JD and Del, and they're able to fly away and escape. So apparently Yoon is a complete badass and an amazing pilot. As they're flying away, they're in a weird angle to where the floor of the plane is actually considered a wall, and the wall of the plane is like the floor. So she's basically flying the plane sideways as they're flying away. As this is happening though, they're getting bombarded yet again by the swarm, getting completely shot up as they're trying to escape. The plane crash lands, but luckily lands outside of the crater, so they're outside of that whole area, looking down into the crater, looking at the burial camp, looking at the swarm and everything there. They get out of the plane and they check on Yoon, but unfortunately she's dead. In her last breaths, she did what it took to save them and get them out of that crater. And they're really sad about it, and they really they really wish they could have done something to help her, but she's gone. And now they're looking into the crater and pondering what to do next, because at this point all you see is an amazing amount of swarm coming out of the hole, and it's just going across in different directions, attacking everything. So it's essentially like Emergence Day, the sequel, is what it almost sounded like to me. It's just a crazy amount. And this is just one burial site, so that's one thing to keep in mind. There's several burial sites across the planet, which more than likely will have swarm pouring out of it as well. After this happens, the novel cuts back to Marcus and Kait waiting inside the common room that they were pushed back to after the last fight with the swarm. They're actually sleeping in there, waiting, getting some rest after the last fight. And while everything seems okay, out of nowhere, a juvie pushes in and starts attacking Kait. They weren't really ready for this at all, and Marcus was even sleeping at the time, but luckily he woke up and got a random stool, hitting it so hard that it actually was able to be pushed out over the cliffside, falling into the rapids below. After this, they actually get ready for the upcoming fight by turning one of the tables on its side and using it as cover. Kind of reminds me of like Gears of War 2 when you'd be able to do that in the games. They get pushed by more juvies and they're shooting down the tunnel, killing all of them, but juvies are able to push past their barrier and actually jump on each of them. So all three of them, Oscar, Marcus, and Kait, are being attacked by juvies and are on the ground basically wrestling with them. And as this is happening, the kids are nowhere to be found, Eli and Mackenzie. But out of nowhere, Eli comes in and pulls a shot with his huntsman rifle and actually gets a collateral, killing all three of them with a straight shot, killing all three juvies. After this happens, they decide to push out of the cave entirely and go to the ammo stash. So they actually cross over to the other side with the rope to the higher part of the cave. But Oscar is the last one to go, so they're all waiting for him to come, but he doesn't. So Kait, fearing the worst, starts calling out to him saying, Oscar, do you have the rope? Where are you? And then as they're waiting for him, they eventually do see him crossing over to their side, but he's having a lot of trouble and he's starting to struggle, and he actually slips and starts falling the side of the mountain. But luckily Kait reaches out and catches him, but Kait is a lot smaller than Oscar, so she starts going over the cliff. But luckily at the last second, Marcus grabs her arm and starts holding both of them, but with the weight of both of them falling, it makes him trip and he lands on his stomach, and he's basically holding them over the cliff on his stomach and doing his very best to keep them. You know, he doesn't want them to fall, obviously. As they're doing this, as they're struggling trying to get their way back up, they see that juvies are starting to push towards them up the side of the mountain, out of the cave that they just came from. So now they're in a weird, bad position where they're dangling from the side of the cliff with juvies coming right at them. Kait tells them to let her go, to let her and Oscar go, let them fall, so that he can protect the kids. The kids are the main important things at this point, to forget about them. And Marcus kept telling her, not a fucking chance. And he kept saying that over and over when she would tell them to let her go, and he wouldn't listen. So he just keeps holding them, and luckily Eli pulls yet another save for them. 3 juvies are approaching them, and he actually grabs one of the ammo stashes that are stuck. Basically imagine a crate on a set of wheels, and he pushes it really hard. As the juvies are coming out, it hits one of them, knocking it off the cliff, and then he pulls out his marksman rifle and shoots one straight through the heart and shoots another one's hand off. They both fly off the cliff, dying, saving Marcus, Kait, and Oscar. Yet again, this kid is relentless. They realize that even this back cave on the other side of the mountain for the ammo stash is no longer safe, due to the fact that the swarm is pursuing them so much. So while they're looking through the cave that has everything that they need, all the ammo stash and everything, they take everything that they could possibly carry and need, and they luckily find some parachutes. So they have to jump off the cliff and basically fly down the side of the mountain to escape this area because it's just completely overran. The funny part is, as they're looking over the cliff, you know, Marcus does it without hesitation, and Oscar's kind of getting ready, not really sure about it, and Kait just pushes him right off the cliff. So she pushes him right off the cliff. He goes flying, he's freaking out, and he's like, "Damn you, Kait!" And they fly down to the side of the mountain. They all make it just fine, and the kids are attached to Oscar and Kait. Kait has Mackenzie, the little girl, and Oscar has Eli, the little boy, and they're just kind of both flying down the side of the mountain with the kids. As they land in the water, Kait releases Mackenzie so they can just float inside the water on the lake and kind of just make their way down the area. Oscar lands near them and asks Kait, "Why the hell did you push me off the mountain?" And she tells Oscar the same exact thing that Marcus told her, saying that everyone hesitates and they didn't have time. So he's just sitting there kind of like mad, wants to say something to her, but he won't. And there's actually one funny part later in the novel. Personally, I don't remember exactly where it happens, but essentially after this part, Oscar talks with Marcus and basically says, you know, "Did you teach her that? Like, you know, were you the reason why she pushed me over the cliff, essentially?" And Marcus is like, possibly. So he kind of plays it off. But anyways, as they're flowing down the lake here, they see that on the shoreline that there is dead bodies. Dead swarm, dead outsiders, just bodies everywhere. And this could definitely be from the battles that they fought while fighting the swarm. But the bodies are people from South Village. People that actually took their own lives by jumping off the cliff because they did not want to get snatched up. As they're flowing by and see these bodies, Mackenzie, the little girl, finally starts showing a sign of grief and looks really distraught. Throughout this whole time, throughout the whole novel, the kids seemed really brave no matter what and never showed any sign of remorse or sadness, even though that all this craziness was going on. They seemed completely immune to this type of fear. But once Mackenzie saw the bodies of the outsiders, something in her changed. Next, we cut back to JD and Dell, and showing them at the edge of the crater looking in as they can see the swarm pouring out of it. As they're sitting there, they don't know what to do because they're surrounded just by desert, and their only mode of transportation, the plane, is completely destroyed. But luckily, out of nowhere, Baird arrives in a Raven with a huge amount of DBs pouring out of a condor, landing directly into the crater. As this is happening, JD sees it and he thinks, oh my god, the DBs are going to get destroyed, because he's seen how they are when it comes to fighting the swarm. But luckily, the DBs are actually smarter now, and they're acting more effective when it comes to fighting the swarm. They're fighting more like soldiers, and this is due to Baird's research with Cole, where they actually got some ideas and tactics to use in battle. While they're not the greatest, battle against the swarm, they do tend to get destroyed, but they do tend to fare better. So they are improving, so that's the good news. JD is really happy to see Baird and actually calls him Uncle Baird, and Baird's like, oh, so now I get an uncle. And he states that due to Dave's transmission, they were able to find JD and Dell. Luckily, Baird essentially just saved their asses. He saved them with the update, he saved them with sending the DBs and coming to them in the Raven. And now they actually tell them that they need to go. They need to go to South Village to find Marcus and everyone else, because when that DB's head fell down the side of the mountain, it caught a glimpse of Marcus, and it gave them an idea that they were in South Village. So they go to South Village, they fly over there, and they actually see the Snapjaws, the big old birds that was mentioned in the other parts of the book. But they kind of keep their distance, and they start going to the village. They see that it's completely surrounded, and they send in more DBs to fight the swarm. And then they kind of fly down the side of the cave to see where Marcus and everyone was, but they see that they're not there. So they fly back up to the top of the village and look down at it, and they can see that the DBs are battling a carrier. And Cole actually whips out the turret on the side of the helicopter and starts shooting at the carrier. But then the carrier starts, opening his chest, shooting out the little weird projectiles out of it, and Cole's able to take him down. But the carrier pulled a really crazy tactic for something that a carrier would do. It just seems completely out of nowhere, but what it did is when the projectiles were shot by Cole, it created a weird orange mist that kind of caught their attention and got their eyes off of the carrier. And the carrier did something really unique that no other carrier has done. It actually used its arms to launch itself at the helicopter that they were in and grabbed right onto the railing, the landing gear, and starts sending the Raven flying down the side of the cliff, and they're spinning and freaking out. And the carrier is holding onto it with one hand and using its other big arm to reach into the area of the helicopter, trying to grab them. The way the book described it is just imagine big fingers or like a big claw reaching through the plane trying to grab them. And luckily none of them do get grabbed. They're able to keep their distance, but the plane is still going down the side of the cliff. They look completely screwed, but JD has the most amazing idea ever. And what he does is he can see that the Snapjaws are in the distance, and he sees that they're very vicious, angry, monstrous birds, and they're all protecting a nest with an egg. So what he does, which is kind of messed up, is he grabs a grappling hook, shoots the grappling hook out, and it sticks into the egg, making all the Snapjaw birds go into a huge frenzy. He pulls the egg in a way to where the egg flies directly at the carrier, and out of instinct, the carrier eats it. This pisses off the Snapjaws insanely, and they all start attacking the carrier as they're all flying down the side of the cliff. The funny part is the carrier is a moron, and instead of using its one free arm to swipe at the Snapjaws, it releases its arm that it's holding onto the landing gear to try to swipe at the Snapjaws, making it fall downward and falls directly into the lakes below with the crazy rocks and the rapids. So the carrier is dead, and this seems really insane real fast, but luckily Sam is actually a really good pilot, and she's able to stable the helicopter, and then they kind of just fly down the side of the cliff, go down towards the lake where Marcus and Kait and everyone flew down on the parachutes, because they're just deciding to fly in that direction since the carrier basically pulled them down that way. So they're flying down the same lake that they came through, and luckily they spot the parachutes that they used. They just left them in the water. So now they have the idea that Marcus and Kait are in this direction. So it points them in the right direction, luckily, and they push onward. Now the book cuts right back to Kait and Oscar, and we see them sitting on a campfire that Kait created, and they're just simply relaxing and talking. While this is happening, Marcus and the kids are exploring the area, and they see that there is actually a lumber mill in the distance. So they go there, the kids and Marcus go there to try to explore it to see if maybe there's anything useful there, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. And Marcus is actually pulling a nice thing, trying to keep the kids busy and happy, while Kait and Oscar sit there and discuss. As they're talking, they notice someone approaching, and they're like really uneasy about it. Out of nowhere, Kait screams, "Down!" and Oscar jumps out of the way, and at the perfect moment, because out of nowhere, a scion is approaching them, and it, for whatever reason, is wielding a gigantic scythe and sent it plummeting down right where they were sitting, and they were able to get out of its way. But the scion swung it so hard that it cut the log that they were sitting on in half. So it's really good that they jumped out of the way, because they easily would have gone cut in half just like the log. Kait looks up and she sees that it's not just a scion, but a speaker. For those who don't know, speakers are a variant of the scions that actually can speak human tongue, and actually looks at her, and she feels very uneasy. She looks at Oscar and tells him, "Where are the kids?" And Oscar looks back at her unsure, but the speaker looks right at both of them smiling and says,
"Yes, where?"
Kait tells Oscar to leave to go look for the kids, and he does so. While this is happening, Kait sits back and talks with the speaker, pulling out her necklace to show it that it has the locust symbol. The speaker looks at her and says,
"That's supposed to impress me, girl?"
Kait replies with a lie, saying, "It's all that's left of the last one of you bastards I met." And the speaker replies,
"A worthless trinket from a worthless human."
Kait replies with, "If we're so worthless, why come after us with such determination?" The speaker replies,
"Oh, we need humans, yes. But that's the thing about your species. There are so many of you."
and then rushes her with the scythe again and tries to swipe right down on her, but luckily she dodges it and it gets stuck in the ground. He literally slammed it so hard that it's stuck, and even the scion is having trouble pulling it out. The speaker can't get it out, and so she takes this moment and kicks the handle that is holding the blade of the scythe, snapping it in half. So now the scythe is completely useless. And the funny part is, as it was trying to pull out the scythe, Kait did this, so it used its full force trying to pull it out. The very instant Kait kicked it, the speaker actually flew backwards and landed right into the campfire that Kait had made, making him burn and scream in agony. And the good part about this was the two snatchers that it came with was approaching, but when the speaker started screaming in agony, the snatchers backed off because of what they were seeing. Kait took this moment to try to retrieve her lancer that was laying next to a rock nearby. As she's running towards it, something hits her really hard in her side, in her ribs, and she goes flying and hits the ground very hard. Dazed, she looks up to see another speaker standing next to her with a club. And she was very lucky to be wearing armor, because the book stated that if she wasn't, her ribs would most likely be broken. The first snatcher, the one that fell into the campfire, the one she was speaking to prior, tells the snatchers to go after the children, to go after Marcus and everybody, and it even tells the second speaker to go with them, like he just wants her to himself, even saying,
"This one is mine."
The snatchers listen and they start going after the lumber mill that Marcus and the kids and Oscar are at, but the second speaker replies to the first one with a simple
"No."
and the speakers both approach her. At this point, the book cuts back to Marcus, Oscar, and the kids. Marcus and the kids are inside the lumber mill while Oscar is approaching it. You know, as we saw in the last part where the speaker came out and attacked, Kait told him to go, and this is where it cuts back to him going to the lumber mill. So as he's going to it, he can see in the distance Kait dealing with the speakers, and he can see the two snatchers coming at him. So what he does is, the snatchers are kind of undecided, like they're looking back at Kait and then looking back at him, like they don't know which way to go. So what he does is he starts pretending like he's hurt. He starts walking with the limp and starts running really slow, even falls on the ground to kind of sell it, and this gets the snatchers to go after him so they can get him off Kait, and then he runs into the lumber mill. The second he walks into it, he hears Marcus scream, "Down!" And Oscar jumps on the ground and he sees two big blades fly right by him, two big buzzsaw blades. One cuts the Snatcher in half, and the other one cuts the other Snatcher's leg off, making it really weak and unable to walk. This lets Oscar walk up to it and shoot it in the face with the shotgun, killing it. So now the Snatchers are gone, and Marcus, Oscar, and the kids have regrouped. Before I go any further, I just want to say that the way the book described the lumber mill, the way I imagine it, is it seemed like it was about 3 floors high. And as they're going through the floors, they actually find a old news presser. Just imagine one of these big old machines that prints out newspapers. It's really gigantic, really old-fashioned. They have to retreat up to the 3rd floor, passing the news presser that's on the 2nd floor. As they do this, they barricade themselves inside a back room using, pieces of furniture and everything. And the swarm just keeps pushing through at that door. They keep knocking on it, busting it down. Marcus and Oscar have to basically shoot through the door with their Lancer and Gnasher, killing any drones and juvies that keep trying to come in. The one part that was really creepy is the book described a juvie getting through and crawling up on the ceiling, similar to that of like a wretch back in the old games, and they shoot it down, killing it, of course. As this is all going on, they tell the kids to go around the area in that back room to try to find weapons and maybe even escape, a way to get out. The kids run around the area trying to find this, but they don't really find anything. All they really find is a box full of big hooks, like big hooks that they use. They throw them in the water, and the hooks are big enough to latch onto big logs and then pull out so they can use it for lumber. So they're basically lumber hooks, as I like to call them. And so they're looking at the hooks like, okay, that's not really going to help. We need actual weapons. And even Oscar says that he needs, he'd rather stick with his knife rather than a big ass hook that's going to be too hard to swing around. Out of ammo, they have to switch to Marcus using his chainsaw and Oscar using his knife. Ready to fight, they're ready to go as they can hear drones and juvies approaching, but out of nowhere, they can hear footsteps behind them. Loud thumping, and they're really confused to what's going on. Out of nowhere, the whole back wall behind them rips open, and there's a Swarmak right in their face. The book cuts back to Kait at this point, being chased by the 2 speakers. She's running through the forest as they're chasing her, and she actually pulls a really fast and crazy maneuver where she's running straight, stops, and then dashes back the way she came. When this happens, it trips up the first speaker, and the speaker literally trips and falls on the ground, screaming in anger. As she's running straight, the second speaker is right in front of her, takes a swing at her with its club. She dodges it, pulls out the machete that Reina gave her, and slices its arm, running away. As she's running away, both speakers are sitting there angry that she's basically running away from them, getting away from both of them. But as she's doing so, she looks in the distance and she can see the lumber mill being attacked by the Swarmak, and she can see the 2 speakers looking back at her. She's really worried about them, and as she's looking at the lumber mill, she hears something familiar, something in the distance. A plane. A condor. And you can see the big plane flying over it, and inside the plane is JD, Dell, Sam, Baird, Cole, and they're all ready to go, and they throw out a bunch of DBs to help in the fight, and Cole whips out the turret on the Condor, screaming, "Whoa!" as he starts blasting the Swarmak in the back. The book now cuts to JD and Dell as they drop out of the plane and start running around the area, killing juvies, drones, and pouncers with their weapons, kind of covering the area to kind of make things a little easier for everyone. As they're doing this, Sam is shooting rockets at the Swarmak, but when she does so, some of the rockets hit the lumber mill, causing Marcus, Oscar, and the kids to kind of go flying because she literally hit the Swarmak in the back with rockets, and they were right in front of the Swarmak. This sends Marcus flying through the door, flying all the way down to the 2nd floor right next to the old news presser. Oscar and the kids are okay, but kind of dazed, and Dell actually screams at Sam, "Hey, watch out, someone's probably in there," which there was. Back to Kait, when this was happening, when the Condor was flying over them, she was afraid of being hit by bullets or maybe a rocket in this case, so she actually jumps into the water near the logs as the speakers were chasing her. When she's under the water, she's having a lot of trouble finding a way to breathe because there's nothing but logs around her on the surface. So she's trying to, float underwater, trying to find her way to a pocket of air. And luckily she does. She sticks her mouth through a pocket of air and breathes in and feels better. But as this happens, out of nowhere she feels something grab her leg and pulls her down. It's one of the speakers. The first one with the burn marks on its face after it fell on the campfire. The book cuts back to Marcus, and we see him very hurt as he flew through, basically a door and down a floor, really dazed, having trouble getting up. Oscar looking back at the Swarmac, he's still on the same floor. Luckily he didn't fly through the door, and he can see that the Swarmac is being attacked by the helicopter with the turret and the rockets, and he's sitting there looking at it, not really sure what to do. The kids go up to him, Mackenzie and Eli, and they hand him one of the hooks, the lumber hooks, and he's like, what is this for? Like, he's like, I don't need this. And they look at him and say, we got an idea. So we're gonna come back to that in a second. We're gonna come back to the idea. It's actually a really great idea what they pull. But anyways, the book cuts back to Kait, and we can see that she's getting pulled deeper and deeper in the water as the Scion is looking right at her and smiling at her. As a last-ditch effort, she pulls out the amulet that Reyna gave her, the one with the locust symbol on it, takes one of the pointed edges and stabs it right into the speaker's eye, killing it. So the speaker's falling down deeper in the water with its eyes ripped open, and she makes her way back up to the surface and collapses. As this happens, we cut back to Marcus and everyone and the kids, and we get to see their plan now. What their plan is they actually take the hooks, and Oscar runs up to the back of the Swarmac and stabs one hook into its back. As this is happening, Marcus pulls a really crazy move and cuts underneath the Swarmac, stabbing another hook in its very soft underbelly. So now you got a hook in its back and a hook in its stomach. They then take the other two sides of the hooks and hook them to the big old news presser, and they take one of Mackenzie's last bombs and blows up the floor that is holding the news presser, causing it to fall down another floor and yanking on the two chains that are hooked into the Swarmac. This makes the Swarmac fall on its back, and the second hook actually rips open its stomach, its underbelly, and now it's just laying on its back with an open wound. They take this opportunity and just start blasting its stomach with the turret and the rockets, and they just go off on the Swarmac, killing it. So now the Swarmac is dead. The book cuts back to Kait. After she emerged on the surface and is okay, the other speaker is gone, so she's all alone. All the swarm and everything seems to be okay at this point. She's no longer being pursued. But after being underwater and attacked, she collapses on the floor and has a nightmare. And it's really interesting how the book describes that. I'll actually just read what the actual book says. So the book says, she lies on her back in an endless gray pool, floating serenely on the gentle water, staring up at pure white sky marred only by a black sun, an anti-sun. She feels at peace. There is no danger here. There is no time, no future, no past, just the warm water and the cold sun, a world of opposites unchanging. Kait opens her mouth, unsure what she's going to say, but knowing she must say something. She decides to say, hello? But the word won't come. Her mouth is full of sand. She coughs, spasms, retches. The cold black sun above her vanishes, returns, moves. It's no sun, she realizes. It's an eye. Kait screams and punches out at the... And that's it. That's how her nightmare ends. So we don't know what exactly she was staring at. It's just simply an eye, something coming after her in her dream. Really creepy. And it was just really interesting how they brought that up randomly after all of this. And I really hope that's actually some crazy foreshadowing for her for the game. Kait wakes up to see that JD and Dal are there and helping her up, and all the swarm and everything's gone, so everyone's happy, everyone's back together at this point. After everything is fine and she recovers, she realizes that she has to finally discuss with Oscar what they're going to do with Eli and Mackenzie. So she goes up to Oscar and talks to him and tells him, come with us to New Ephira, it's safe there. And Oscar just doesn't want to. He says that the city life, the cog life, all that is not for him. But they're going to let the kids decide what they want to do. If they're going to go with either with her to New Ephira or go with Oscar. And Oscar tells them that he's going to go to a place called Riftworm Village. So right there, I just want to say that I called it, because in one of my previous videos I talked about how one of the multiplayer maps in Gears 5 shows big bones sticking out of the ground, and I said that those were probably Riftworm bones after it died in Gears of War 2. So he's going to be going to Riftworm Village, which most likely is the same place that the map is in Gears 5. So I just wanted to say that real quick. But anyways, after they discuss this, they ask the kids what they want to do, and the kids in the end decide to go with Oscar to Riftworm Village. They don't want to be a part of the COG either. So they actually drop off Oscar at an old supply cache that only outsiders can find. They take ammo and supplies, and then they leave. Kait feels a really sad and uneasiness as she sees Oscar leaves, but she feels a little better knowing that she actually got to say goodbye this time. The thing that makes me worry is, if you remember in the first Gears 5 trailer, Kait sees somebody's body and is crying horribly because someone died. I'm more than sure that's going to be Oscar, guys. I'm more than sure. So that's going to be really sad when that happens. Next, the book cuts back to them being in New Ephyra, and Baird and Jin discuss plans and what she would like to do with the DBs and DR1s, and essentially plans to make them more efficient to fight the swarm. She also discussed plans that she wants everybody that they can possibly find to flee to New Ephyra and come inside the walls. So she's actually kind of pulling almost like what happened with Prescott with the Hammer of Dawn, where he told everyone to evacuate to Jacinto, but this time around it's Jin telling everybody to evacuate to New Ephyra. So it's kind of almost like replaying what happened in the previous storyline. While she's discussing this, she mentions the fact that she wants everyone to stay here in New Ephyra until they finish Settlement 6. So they're actually working on a whole other settlement to eventually have more space for everybody. Baird argues that the DVs won't be the main way to save the world, and they need to use the hammer, that the Hammer of Dawn is their main hope. Jin states that no matter what, she forbids it and she's completely against it, and she will never let Baird put it back online. And they just sit there arguing about it for a little bit as everyone shows up. Jin focuses on Kait and she says, "Hello, Corporal Diaz." And Kait feels really awkward about it, but she gives her a salute and just stays quiet. JD asks what they're talking about, and Jin starts talking about the DBs and everything, and Dell asks Jin, "Are we talking about a way to end the swarm forever?" And Baird's like, "I like this kid, he's straight to the point." And then Jin gives a very boring, straight answer. "Eventually, we'll figure out a way to eliminate this threat." Some kind of weird political answer that's very boring and plain. They kind of sit there kind of wondering what to do at this point, and Jin sees Marcus and tells him everything about the plan for New Ephyra, and tells him that she's gonna need his help, that she wants him here. Marcus just kind of gives her a nod, like, okay. And then that's where the chapter ends for the final chapter. But now we cut to an epilogue where we see that Baird is back once again in his secret lab, and he tells his computer AI by the name of Iris to look up any type of files that have to do with the Hammer of Dawn. And he finds an old file that was created by Adam Phoenix, and he tells the AI to scrap everything else that has nothing to do with the Hammer of Dawn and only focus on that. As she's going through all the files for him, he sees a word, something that he probably saw before but never really noticed, or maybe even ignored. He tells her to stop looking at the files and to look at a particular one, and he sits there pondering what this file could hold and what it can help him with for the hammer. It has a very simple title: Azura. And that's where the book ends. So what this basically means is that he's going to be looking at old files of Azura. If you guys don't remember what that is, that was the last major island that all the main people were taken to after Prescott kidnapped them and kept them safe. He kept scientists, people like Adam Phoenix and others there during the whole Locust War, and we saw Azura at the end of Gears of War 3. So he's referring back to there for some reason. And I'm thinking maybe that area, maybe that place has some type of tech to get the hammer back on. I'm not really sure. That's his main goal at this point. He wants to get the Hammer of Dawn back online. So I'm thinking maybe he'll go there, find some tech or find some files or something that will essentially help him to do this. But yeah, guys, this is the end of Gears of War Ascendance, a very awesome novel. I really liked it a lot, and I really love the character development between all the characters, really. And also just the way the book described the action, the story. and I really just love this book overall, and I'm really glad to finally get this video to you guys. I know it took a while, but I've been real busy with life and bills and just work and everything, so I finally had time to sit down and just finish the video. I've been working on this for about a week now, on and off when I had time. But yeah guys, if you guys like this video, please definitely hit that like button and subscribe, and tell me what you guys think about the Gears of War Ascendance novel. What do you think this means for Gears 5? What do you think Baird is going to do with the whole thing with Azura? Mention anything that you want to discuss in the comments below, and I'll definitely check them out. But anyways guys, thanks for watching, and remember to hit the notification bell so you guys can be notified every time I make a video. Take it easy guys. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see my most recent Gears of War video, hit that link on the left. If you want to see any of my other content, hit that link on the right. Thanks for watching guys.